start with step number 1. First step to finding your first deal. I would start with learning as much information as you can about this new venture. So I would go on to YouTube, listen to smart people who've been doing it for a long time and get inspired. Start somewhere. I started actually by reading a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. A lot of people have read this book. It's famous in the world of finances, and I would highly recommend it. It was the book that put the fire under me to learn something outside of what I had been taught in school, to go against everything I thought was true about finances. And I highly recommend reading this book. After that, you might want to go onto YouTube and just look for people who are doing it and follow them. I have some favorites that I'd like to share as well, but I would start out by just kind of going into these forums and looking and learning as much as you possibly can about investing. And then you can even go into deeper markets and learn more about your area. For example, I invest in Sonoma County, Northern California, and it's a expensive market. But I have to say, if I can do this in Sonoma County, coming from no background in real estate, anybody can do it. All right, so first step is learn. Watch the videos, determine what makes a deal. So you need to know enough about real estate to know what a deal is. You can't just go out and buy any property. The property has to cover itself, at least. I live in a high appreciation market, and so even if I'm just covering my bases, after I collect my rent, if it covers all of my bills, that's probably still a pretty good deal for my market, because our market is a fast appreciating market. A lot of people say you don't want to bank on appreciation, and I would agree that you do want some cash flow for a rainy day. So cash flow is the difference between what you're bringing in rent and what all your bills at the end of the day cost. That's including your mortgage, your property taxes, your insurance, and any other operating costs that would go into that. Repairs, all of it. So if you add all that up and your rent is over that, then that's the difference. That's called cash flow. Now, this is becoming harder and harder to find. And so I don't want to kid you. This may not be something that even happens in your market. It may be a phenomenon that's of the past, but I don't think that we should just roll over and say, hey, we can't do this anymore. We have to continue to work on our dreams. I was able to find financial freedom through real estate. It took me about 3 years to quit my job, and I believe that you can do it too. So just keep looking and learn as much as you possibly can. All right, once you've learned what you think you know, what you need to know, then there's probably a lot more still to know, but you got to keep moving forward. Don't get stuck here. Don't get stuck in the learning phase and not make any actionable steps that will get you to your first property. So after you've decided that you've learned as much as you need to learn to understand what cash flow is and how it works in real estate, then you'll want to find a buy box. A buy box is just a criteria that you've decided and set out, written it down, and decided this is what's going to be what I'm looking for. This is what I need to see and have in order to buy a house or to buy my first deal. So you might say something like, for example, this would be my buy box would be that I want it to be in my local market, the market that I feel I know the best and understand. 2, I don't want to be in an HOA. I don't want extra layers of government telling me what I can and can't do. So your buy box should get more and more narrow as you determine what it is that you feel comfortable doing. It might just be that you want something that's in your area. It might be a single family home. Maybe it's a duplex for you because that's how the numbers make sense. So determine what your buy box is. Write it down and really get to know it, and then look every day to see if anything falls in your buy box. So that's how you're going to start to really understand and know your market. Part of the learning phase is also just building up confidence. So while you're watching videos, while you're learning about it, start to really believe that this isn't just for other people, but it's for you too. So find your why. You might have a reason that is really going to help you make that move forward, to make those actionable steps. Maybe it's your children, maybe it's the job that you hate. For me, it was kind of a combination of both those things. I wanted to be home with my family more. I wanted more freedom. And I didn't want to have to go to work to make money and be away from the home for many hours. So that was my big why. So find out what your why is. If it's a big enough reason, you're going to keep going. And it gives you motivation to know that this is something worth fighting for. And then really start to believe it. Believe that this can be true for you. All right, step 2 will be finances. Okay, so finances, here's our story a little bit about how we got our first deal. We found our first deal on the MLS, just like any other standard home that gets listed. It was on the MLS. It was probably only on the market for a couple of weeks. We bought it in 2020 when the market was really hot. And so we had already made multiple offers before we had gotten this property, but we found it on the MLS. And the way we found funding, and this may not be true for you, and maybe this is not your story, but this is how we got the funding to do it. It's because we did have some equity that was in our first primary home. But to be completely honest with you, the way we got our first home was living with my parents. My husband and I moved in with my parents for a few months. It might have been close to 6 months, and we used that time to save money. Sure, it wasn't fun. It definitely wasn't glamorous, but we did that in order to save our down payment. So it was a grind, but we were able to buy our first home. And with that first home, we were able to put in some time, do some renovations, fix it up, and now we had equity. That's how we bought our first home, using the equity from our first investment property, using the equity from our first home. The way people can do it is they might have a retirement plan through the company that they work for. Maybe you have a 401k. Maybe this is something you can use to buy your first deal. Another thing you can do, and I've heard of people doing, I've not yet done it myself, but maybe it will happen to me, is to ask family. If you have a good relationship with your family and it's something that you can do, it doesn't ever hurt to ask. Sometimes people just want to hear what you're doing. And if you have a good deal to present to them, then they might want to be a part of that. And maybe they want to be in a partnership with you, or maybe they just want to help you out. So go and ask people. Don't be private about what you're doing. Let the people around you know what you're trying to do. And maybe you'll be able to raise the money easier than you think. All right. The other thing is just saving. Sometimes you just need to get on a budget and really make sure that you're spending less than you're making so you're able to put a little bit of money aside to invest. Because if you're spending everything that you're making, you're going to have that problem even after you invest. And it can become harder and harder. Just because you're making more money doesn't mean that you're going to be richer if you're spending more money. So it's a problem. It's a root problem that may need to be addressed. So maybe get on a budget. Maybe find a budgeting app that works for you and really start to understand your finances. See if you're even able to save. See how long it would take you to save. Don't say you can't ever do it, and say that how can you do it? And so maybe you just need to find a way to save a little bit. Maybe you're close and you just need to push for a year to get to the point where you can put that first down payment down. Okay, it might also be a side hustle. That's the last thing I want to say about finances, is that maybe you need to do something on the weekends, find a new job, find a way to bring in a little extra income so you can make that jump from just being a consumer to being able to actually provide a service. And that's where it's going to be the difference. So that's how we got the finances to buy our first. But let me go into more about finances. To start out, you're going to want to find a really good loan officer. So you need to start kind of putting together a team, even though you're not there yet. You start working on your team now. I would find a really good loan officer in your area who knows your area as well, where you're planning on investing, and start asking them questions. Tell them that you need to know everything that will be required of you to qualify for a loan. You could have a W-2 job, and that might be what helps you qualify for your first loan. Or if you don't have a W-2 job, maybe you work for yourself. It could be more difficult to acquire a loan this way, but it's not impossible, and I will do a video on that later because I have good friends who've done it recently. And so the first thing you're going to need is to gather the paperwork. This is just a boring part of it, but you have to do it, and it's really important to get all these documents onto your computer, somewhere that's easy to access, where you can upload them quickly and email them to a loan officer. You don't want to get stuck in all this paperwork or not be able to find something when you think you found a great deal. So get ready now. Go ahead and find all those documents, upload them onto your computer, and be ready. So the first thing you're going to need is your tax returns. You'll need at least 2 years. They're going to want the year that you're in. Well, they're going to want the past 2 years if you have it. So you'll want the year prior. So we're in 2025. So we would have to present our 2023, maybe, and definitely our 2024 tax returns. So have those ready. You'll need probably the first 15 pages. You might want to ask your loan officer for more details about that. You'll need those all uploaded onto your computer and ready to send. The second thing you're going to need is mortgage statements. If you have them, it's applicable. They'll want a mortgage statement, and they'll want to see that you've been paying your mortgage on time. They'll also want a declaration page from your insurance company proving that you've insured the property that you're living in. that may not be applicable to you. So don't worry about that if it's not. Okay, next you're gonna need 30 days of pay stubs. So you're gonna need to have a couple pay stubs on hand, download them from wherever you need to get them from, have pictures of them on your phones, or put them somewhere safe, upload them to your computer, have them ready. Any overtime, you're also gonna wanna collect anything that proves that you work overtime. So you might need to get a number that identifies that you are in fact employed, where you're saying you're employed, and it'll also show a breakout of what you make, your income, and year to date what you've made in overtime, if that makes up a good portion, or if your salary. I think that covers what you'll need. Oh, lastly, they will also want to know what kind of debt you have. Now they're going to do a credit check if you're actually going to look to be pre-qualified to take out a loan. They're going to pull your credit and they're going to be able to see what kind of debt you have out. But it's helpful for them to know exactly how much debt you have and what the payments are on that debt. They use all that information to come up with a debt to income ratio. And basically they're looking to see that you're making more money than the amount of debt that you have that's taking from you in a given month. So basically they'll come back to you at some point when you give them this information and say you either qualify or you don't qualify. And if you do qualify, they'll tell you for how much. And then that number will be what you work with. Okay, so that moves us on to step number 3, making an offer. So once you've talked to your loan officer, you really need to get into a good relationship with an agent in your area or a broker. Find a really good agent who you feel comfortable talking with. This has to be a person you feel comfortable with. If you feel like it isn't a good fit, then just move on. There's plenty of other people out there. Find somebody that you feel really comfortable talking to and who's willing to really listen to you and understand what it is that you're trying to do. So your situation might be different than what maybe they've seen in the past or their normal clientele. So you want to find a person who's willing to work with you and understand what you're doing. So you want to tell them fully what your plan is, what you want, share your buy box with them so they know exactly what to look for you. And then you're going to start making offers. With that dollar amount that you were given, you can either go right around it, and my recommendation is to try to go under what you've been pre-approved for. So go ahead and get that pre-approval letter, share it with your agent so that they know what kinds of properties you're going to be targeting. And hopefully you can find things in your area or the area that you're looking in that are in your price range and also meet the criteria of your buy box. Make those offers and don't give up when you hear a couple no's. We gave a lot of offers before before our first one was accepted. And so just get used to people saying no. It's okay. And make sure your agent's okay with it too. Make sure your agent knows that, hey, this just wasn't the right one. Move on. There's going to be more. Making lots of offers, then get in contract. Once you're in contract, all kinds of other doors will open up. The strategy that we used was we went in on our first deal offering over asking to get the deal. Once we got into contract, we were able to work backwards, find problems with the property, real big problems that actually needed to be addressed. We then asked for money off of the asking price due to what we found. So this might be a good strategy for you. Maybe it's not, but it's worth a shot. Getting into contract puts a lot of the power into your hands. So you're in a place where you might be able to back out, but you also may be able to make a better deal. So make sure that your agent is willing to work with you in this. If you find something in the property that wasn't disclosed and it's really concerning, you can bring it to the seller's attention and ask for money off. And that's exactly what we did. I've shared in the previous video, and I'll share it right now. We were able to save $50,000 on our first deal. We found mold in the kitchen that was not disclosed originally. So this turned what would have been an okay deal into a great deal. That $50,000 was then what we used to renovate the property and make it new. So that brings us to step number 4. If you're in contract and you know you're heading towards the closing, you better start moving quickly. I would not waste time. I would jump right in to finding a contractor as soon as possible if work needs to be done. Find a good contractor, get a quote, and shop around a little bit, but don't spend too much time because time is of the essence. You want to move quickly and you want to start thinking of an exit strategy just in case things don't work out. Hopefully things move as planned, but if they don't, there are options. So don't be tied down to thinking there's only one way to do it because there might be other options that will work for you. Maybe you just need to flip it after it's been renovated. Maybe it's ready to go, depending on your market, but be flexible. Nail down a date to get started. Once you find a great contractor, pick a date, stick to it, and hire out the work. Get it moving. Okay, to do this within 2 months. That's the other piece of advice I have. Don't really want to take on renovations that take more than 2 months. The first 2 months, you won't even have a mortgage. So it's a great time to get things done. Be prepared to move. Maybe you need to move into the property and make it your primary residence so that you can afford it. You're going to have to come up with less money if you move into the house. So this is a big perk to getting into your first deal. All right, find renters. That's the last part of it. So once you get the house, if you're not moving into it yourself and not making it your primary for a time, which I recommend doing and we've done before, find renters. And I'll do a whole nother video on how we find renters, and we've had great success so far. But you want to move quickly on these things. Anyways, that's it for our first deal, and I hope I can bring you some more information soon and give you more exact numbers. Okay, bye.